Welcome everyone, this is Andres Restart, and today we are talking about how there is now more hope for a Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Remake. But what I find especially interesting about this is that while I am coming at this from the angle of saying there is more hope because we have new information from the Zelda team that may suggest a bit more about this, but the rumors surrounding this I no longer believe, yet despite that, yes, I am now believing even more so that this can happen. But I want to make that clear. It's something I believe can happen because it's a theory that I've been speculating on, or others have been speculating on. It's a prediction. I do think an Ocarina of Time remake will eventually happen, but we don't know if it will happen, and we don't know when it will happen. And so today we're going to be talking about how some of the rumors surrounding this topic are no longer really believable, but also why we believe this in the first place despite the rumors or even before the rumors, and also this latest information that makes it even more believable and it's giving us hope for what could be one of the most exciting remakes ever. At least if you're a big Ocarina of Time fan, which I think many Zelda fans are, or those that are new Zelda fans would love to give it a try in a modern way. And so we're going to be talking about that today. But before going forward, let me point out that we are aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers, so if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and enjoy the ride as we talk about Nintendo every day. So I'm going to talk about why there are some of these rumors we don't really believe anymore. Then I'm going to go over the new information that pertains to Ocarina of Time specifically, and then I'm going to piece it all together and break down why this makes so much sense. So firstly, one leaker that's been out there that I don't like to cover too often because of the poor track record, most recently has lost some credibility, and that's Zippo. Now, Zippo, I would say in general, has had a very spotty track record at best, but they somewhat recently gained a certain level of credibility because they talked about there being a Mario Wonder Direct when people weren't necessarily expecting a Mario Wonder Direct, and they were right on that, and the timing matched up. And so, I myself started paying a little bit more attention to them. And when a lot of the Zelda remake stuff popped up, they put out their own post talking about the Hero of Time returning. Of course, it may have been the case that they were piggybacking off others. I had already made several videos off this, there were a lot of people talking about this already. There was the big tweet from Dr. Sircon Toto where he said ZR 2023. And a lot of people were taking that to mean Zelda Remake or Zelda Remaster 2023. But with the Game Awards having come and gone, and Zippo also making a post about there being another Code recollection, and Princess Peach Showtime being shown off there and that not happening, the credibility for Zippo has gone down again. It almost feels like Zippo heard from Pyoro about another Code recollection, and may have suggested that as being a part of the Game Awards as if it was a given, and it was not even close. So, their track record remains spotty at best, and I'm gonna kinda just take what they said about the Hero of Time returning and just forgetting about it for a good long while. But when it comes to Dr. Sircon Toto, this is someone who has industry information that's within the industry that would know about what's going on. They have a history of telling us about Zelda, and they told us about the Tears of the Kingdom trailer when it had the 2022 release date, which is why they initially put out a tease of Z2 2022 a while back, and that was correct. But most recently, they put out the ZR 2023. We thought that might be for a remake or remaster, and that would be what the R was standing for, but what it feels like that probably was for is Reveal, Zelda Reveal 2023, and what was revealed was that they are working on a Zelda movie, because that was announced just a few weeks ago. And we haven't gotten any sort of announcement of a Wind Waker or Twilight Princess or any sort of Zelda content at the Game Awards, and we're probably not going to get any sort of Zelda announcement until next year at the earliest. So this Zippo stuff, this Sircon Toto stuff that is legitimate but was for a movie, not a remake or a remaster, these things were really fueling the fire for a lot of this Zelda remake conversation. But what also has fueled the fire even more so has been the 25th anniversary for Ocarina of Time. A lot of people have been putting out tribute videos and celebrations and different sort of envisionings of how an Ocarina of Time remake may look. It's clearly something that the Zelda fanbase wants. That's clear. But this whole idea about an Ocarina of Time remake actually goes back to well before the last couple months. It's been rumored and theorized for actually a few years already. There are some videos made by GameInformer Jesse that I'll link in the description below, where a lot of this was already discussed. There was Ocarina of Time trademarks and things like this, but as time went on and there was no announcement, people kind of gave up on the idea. But I actually do believe it can still happen. And we'll talk more about that in a bit, but as promised, I would like to get into some of the new information that's come out, and that's coming from this most recent GameInformer interview with both Hidemaru Fujibayashi, the director for Tears of the Kingdom, and Eiji Aonuma, the producer for Tears of the Kingdom. And so there's actually a lot of really cool details in this interview, and we may be talking about some of these other things brought up here in the coming days in different videos, but we're just going to be focusing on the stuff centered around Ocarina of Time. So they ask, have you heard the theory that some scenes in Tears of the Kingdom are perhaps loose retellings of some events from Ocarina of Time? Eiji Aonuma. Oh, no, I'm hearing that for the first time. Well, there's Rauru, there's the Imprisoning War, and there are some scenes in Tears of the Kingdom that resemble scenes in Ocarina of Time, particularly the flashbacks. For example, you have the scene where Ganondorf is kneeling before the King of Hyrule before he betrays him. Fujibayashi. We understand that fans have theories, and that's a fun thing to do for fans. We also think about what kinds of theories fans may come up with given what we create. It's not like we're in trying to plan ahead for those theories, but in the series there's this idea of reincarnation in that Zelda and Link, as they appear in different titles, they are not the same person per se, but there's sort of this fundamental soul that carries on. Because of that, certain scenes may turn out similar, like you were saying, the antagonist kneeling before the king. Those scenes might turn out because they are sort of like glimpses or representations of the soul of the series. For people to kind of pick up on that and see that, it's something that we enjoy also, and it kind of helps to create this myth of the Legend of Zelda. So there has been this discussion that there are a lot of details in Tears of the Kingdom that seem to relate to Ocarina of Time. And here they're saying that it's not necessarily the intention to match up Ocarina of Time exactly, but that in general, different Zelda games are going to carry over a similar spirit, and so there may be some ideas that will be shared across them. And so you might be thinking, well, what does this mean for this Ocarina of Time remake? Stick with me here, there's more. A game I referenced a couple questions ago, Ocarina of Time, just turned 25 years old 2 weeks ago. When you look back at that game, how do you assess the legacy of that title? Aonuma. I think with Ocarina of Time, that was us establishing The Legend of Zelda as a 3D game. Mr. Miyamoto was the director of that title, and then I kind of took the baton from him, and then it was my task to take that form that we had established with Ocarina of Time and carry it forward. Then, in working with Mr. Fujibayashi with Skyward Sword, I had at that point been involved with the series for quite a while, and then the job became, how do we take what we've established until that point and create something new and carry the series forward? The process had continued through to Breath of the Wild. When you're thinking about legacy of a game like Ocarina of Time, there's been a flow that feels natural to us on the development team of one creator to another, one game to another that has taken us all the way to Tears of the Kingdom. I think that legacy and the momentum of that legacy will see us through to future titles going forward as well. So here, more Ocarina of Time stuff is brought up, and there's nothing necessarily stated about, oh yep, we're going to make an Ocarina of Time remake game. They never said anything like that. But there is this clear understanding of the importance of its legacy and what it's meant for the future of the Zelda series. And so let me bring you to the part here that gives us hope. Additional hope. Thank you both so much for your time. I've heard about how sometimes questions about games can inspire them to be made. So I selfishly want to ask you about a modern Ocarina of Time remake, but I have a feeling I know the answer I'll get. Eiji Aonuma laughs, no comment. And so, while there's nothing here that many of you may consider to be substantial, by not denying the possibility of an Ocarina of Time remake, when Ocarina of Time has been brought up quite a bit and been the center of conversation and rumored ad nauseum about being remade, Aonuma not taking the opportunity to deny this in any way, shape, or form, I think says a lot. And while it doesn't confirm anything, it doesn't in any way take away from our hope that it can happen. In fact, it does the opposite. It gives us more hope that it can happen. And so with this in mind, let me now explain all the other reasons why I think an Ocarina of Time remake makes a lot of sense. Firstly, we have this history of Eiji Aonuma teasing Zeldas to come later down the road. Back in 2018, at a Legend of Zelda musical concert in Osaka, Japan, Eiji Aonuma came out on stage and said, "I know what you were thinking. Skyward Sword for Switch, right?" And then shortly afterwards, Nintendo officially denied that Skyward Sword for Switch was coming. But then, 3 years later, in 2021, early 2021, so actually more like 2.5 years later, Skyward Sword HD was announced for Nintendo Switch. So there's a clear history here of Aonuma teasing future Zelda projects, even when he's not supposed to. And so this brings me back to an interview we talked about a month or so ago from Nintendo Dream Magazine, a Japanese publication, where they were also interviewing both Fujibayashi and Aonuma, and they were talking about the character Rauru in Tears of the Kingdom and how that name is a name they've used in prior Zelda games like Ocarina of Time with that character. And this is what Aonuma said. "When I first heard that he would be called Rauru, I thought it was a very natural progression. I wonder how many of the people currently playing Tears actually know about the character Rauru. I'll point out that it says Raul, that's a translation issue, it's Rauru." But here, Aonuma was talking about how he is not sure how many people would actually even know who Rauru is. I'll also add that yes, there is a town known as Rauru Town in Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, but that's a town, not a character. Aonuma is talking about the character from Ocarina of Time. And so it's interesting that Aonuma would talk about Rauru in this way. One, because he has this history of teasing things when it comes to future Zelda projects, but also it's him acknowledging that the current Zelda fanbase, a lot of them may not know who Rauru is from Ocarina of Time, suggesting that there may be reason to go back to it. To which some people may scratch their heads and say, well, they've already revisited Ocarina of Time, why would they do it again? Well, Ocarina of Time 3D came out in 2011. As of this recording, it's 2023. It's been more than 12 years. And interestingly, Ocarina of Time's original release was in 1998. The remaster for Ocarina of Time happened 13 years later, and we're at a point where we're approaching 13 years later after that. So even that game has gotten pretty old, and that was just a remaster. As we discussed earlier, Ocarina of Time is clearly really important to the legacy and history of Zelda, and the producer of the Zelda series acknowledges that a lot of the Zelda fanbase may not be so well acquainted with this game, yet it's still so important to the Zelda series. And with Ocarina of Time not being on a modern console in HD, there's a lot of people who just don't have the ability to play this kind of game. So from that perspective, it does make sense to make it available. Now, of course, Ocarina of Time is available on Nintendo Switch Online. They can play it in that way, but we're referring to a modern way, and the 3D version is not available. So of all the different 3D Zeldas that could be remade, I would say the one that probably makes the most sense is Ocarina of Time, based off the things that Aonuma may have been hinting at, or is at least not denying, but also because Ocarina of Time is that initial 3D Zelda game. It's the one that's the oldest in terms of repurposed 3D Zeldas, so if Nintendo's going to start going back to 3D Zeldas and remaking them as opposed to remastering them, Ocarina of Time would be first in line. And that brings me to my next point in terms of why I think this is happening. I do think Nintendo may need to start remaking these 3D Zeldas as opposed to doing remasters, because Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword have already been remastered. They've all been enhanced in some way and repurposed for a more modern system, of course, not the most modern system, that being the Switch. And Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are current modern games already available on the platform. But Nintendo's already built up this habit of going back to older Zeldas, especially when they close out a generation with a major Zelda like Tears of the Kingdom. It came out earlier this year, and we've heard from many different places that Switch 2 is coming out next year, and even if somehow it doesn't come out next year, it is coming very soon. When a major Zelda closes out a generation, Nintendo makes sure to have something else Zelda available early on for the next system. Spirit Tracks came out at the end of the DS lifecycle. Ocarina of Time 3D, less than 2 years later, was available in the beginning of the 3DS lifecycle. Skyward Sword came out at the end of the Wii's lifecycle. Wind Waker HD was available at the beginning of the Wii U's lifecycle. And so with Tears of the Kingdom coming out at the end of this life cycle, and there not being a big modern Zelda that can be used as a cross-gen title like they did with Twilight Princess or Breath of the Wild, what makes the most sense in order to get a major Zelda game, a major 3D Zelda release that will bring over the Zelda fanbase, which does sell systems, is repurposing another Zelda game. And repurposing Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom aren't going to have much impact because these are recent games, and they're already available on the Switch, and the Switch 2 is likely to be backwards compatible. They more likely need to go back to one of their other 3D Zeldas, and since they've all been remastered, you don't remaster them at this point, you remake them, and there is a difference. Remaking them means a full-on visual rebuild. You make it as if it's a modern game, with no artifacts from the past. And this may even include some gameplay changes, and of course quality of life updates, but ultimately constructing the game in a way where it's a modern game. And this is something that would take far less development effort than a brand new Zelda title, and it could even be outsourced with the Zelda team overseeing to some capacity. And this would be the best way to bridge the gap between Tears of the Kingdom and the next major 3D Zelda. There'll probably be a 2D Zelda, but they're going to need more than just a 2D Zelda between now and then, and they're probably going to want something that's going to be a real visual showcase that is Zelda-centric to bring over that Zelda fanbase onto a newer, more powerful system. And for that reason, alongside this new bit of info where Aonuma's been questioned about literally the possibility of a remake, and he didn't deny it, yeah, I think it's happening. When is it happening? Well, timing-wise, probably within the first 2 years of the Nintendo Switch 2. But of course, Nintendo are the kings of left field, and this is just a prediction. It could be something else, but I would be shocked if there isn't something major Zelda-related that doesn't come out early on for a next-generation system, and it's just too soon for a brand new Zelda game. That's probably going to take about half a decade. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andres Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.